welcome to the Motivation Blueprint. So unlock your inner drive. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share up my screen in a second. We'll go through a presentation and there will be some time in there for some questions as well. So if you do have any questions, comment away as you do. And if you're over on Zoom, just pop them in the chat as well and I'll check them periodically. Now, I can obviously see you guys on Zoom. I can't see anyone on Facebook. I just get a number. So if you are watching on Facebook, just drop a comment, just say hello, drop live, put whatever you want in there, but just let me know that you're there and then we can have some interaction that way. Right, let's crack on. Okay, so the Motivation Blueprint, unlock your inner drive. So we're going to discuss what motivation is, why we need it and how we create it. Very few of you are doing tip number 3, so I would advise you stick around and look out for that. And I think that is key here. That really is a game changer. Like I said, I'm going to keep stopping occasionally and just sort of going through, for questions and whatnot. So who's this for? So this is for, typically this is going to be tailored towards these people, but it's not exclusively for those. But career-driven men, 40 to 55, don't look and feel how they should. Looking for that sustainable change, not a quick fix or shred. Willing to make a change and ultimately don't want to sacrifice, the fun out of life. So what is motivation? So these are some definitions off Google. I'm not going to read these all out to you, but you can see exactly what it there. But essentially for me, it is that driving force. We need that motivation to push us forward, to get us going, to ultimately achieve those goals that we set out for, whatever they are. And that could be health and fitness, performance like we're discussing here. It could be something else. It could be something to do with, work or relationships, absolutely anything really. And why do we need it? So it can be quite easy to sort of start off, but you need that true motivation to keep going and continue, long term. You can do anything, even at 100 miles an hour for a short time, but you're going to burn out. And that's where it starts to get tough mentally and physically, depending on what you're doing. And you're going to need that level of motivation. So often people call the medium to long-term discipline, but you can't create that discipline without motivation. You need to find that motivation. You need to make that start. We need some sensible actions, and I'm going to go more into that shortly. That will breed the results, and we need to see those results, and then that will create the discipline. If any part of that chain is missing, it's not going to work. You're not going to achieve that. Now, before I go into my top 3 tips, I'm just going to tell a little bit of story, just give this a bit of backstory. So that isn't Dan, and Dan's not really his name, but this was a real person that I spoke to. So Dan was a sales director for a large company in the UK, married, kids, but they had moved out. Now, he approached me as he was 30 kilos overweight, pre-diabetic, high blood pressure. He was worried. He wasn't happy in his health. He felt tired, lethargic, and a lot of his clothes didn't fit. And, he approached me. We had some conversations about potentially doing some work together. So after some consideration, Dan decided he wasn't going to move forward with the program. Absolutely fine. I don't apply pressure to people when they do, have that conversation with me. He wanted to use his leave and he purchased a camper van and he wanted to travel the UK, which sounds great. Now, to cut that long story short, and I'll cover this more later, Dan did sort his health without my help, but probably not the way he wanted, but we'll cover that shortly. So here we are, top 3 tips to get motivated. So tip number 1, what's important? So if I'm trying to motivate myself or a client to achieve a goal, we need to connect the dots. We need to know what it is that's important to us. When you understand your own priorities in life, you can then connect that goal to that priority. So the way I do that is we use a short questionnaire. So the questionnaire is designed to be repetitive. It's going to ask you various questions about your life, about social situations, what you think about, all these different things. And at the end of this, you can tally that all up and you'll have your top 3 priorities. Now mine came out as family, business and travel in that order. Having done this work, I can relate and understand when my health, fitness is good, how is my family affected? How is my business affected? How are my travels affected? And equally so when it's poor, how are they affected as well? So when it comes to fitness, I think about my family. I'm more or less energetic, depending on which way, I'm going. my mood can be different. I'm just not as enthusiastic, not as playful, not as funny, not a nice person to be around as such when I'm not feeling 100%. So that's where I mainly notice it in my sort of family areas. When it comes to business, and again, thinking about looking after myself, when I do look after myself, I feel sharper, I feel more on the ball, I'm more creative. I support my clients better. Everything just clicks a little bit better. Whereas when I'm not, I feel lethargic. I do sit and look at a blank screen, and I struggle to come up with those ideas. So again, it shows up. Now, no one likes to admit that they judge a book by its cover, but we do. As humans, first impressions are important. And now I'm not going to be on the cover of Men's Health magazine, and I don't have any aspirations to do so. But I know if I turned up on these calls, if I turned up in this group now and I was spilling out the chair and I didn't look like I could look after myself, how are you going to trust that I can help you to overcome that, to improve your health, to have that level of control over these things? And when it comes to traveling, I'm not the sort of person that wants to sit on the Sunlander all day. I want to go out and explore. I'm up and down. I want those bags of energy. I want to be able to get around. I don't want my mobility to stop me. And when I am done, when I am tired and I've gone out and I've done all these things and I come back to the pool, I want to just whip my top off and just chill and just enjoy the moment and not worry about it, not look around, not be sort of body conscious. And again, not the cover of Men's Health, but I don't need to be. It's about finding that balance for you. It's about finding out where you're happy. And that doesn't mean you need 5% body fat or a raging six-pack. It's just about being comfortable. So just to summarize, you need to find out what's important to you. You need to connect those dots. And when you can understand that, you can then start to relate your health, your fitness, all of these routines, all of these things to that. Tip number 2. Even if you understand your own priorities and how your goal will influence these, you can still fail. It's important to be realistic. It's crucial that the goal is manageable, it's achievable, and it is realistic. Even though I understand my health, my fitness, how it affects my family, my business, my travels, that's not enough. I can't just take on the world. I can't take on everything. If the goal or the task at hand is too difficult, the motivation is not going to see me through. It's not going to carry me through there. I need to be realistic with whatever I do set out for. So we as human beings don't enjoy struggling. So we need to remove as much friction as possible. We need to make that win, those results, as easy as possible. So look, an example of that, if you're not exercising at all, target going once a week. Don't decide you're going to get up every morning at 5 a.m, jump in the ice bath and get off to the gym. Start small. Just think about something that you can manage and you can achieve, and that could just be one gym visit. Is that going to make a huge difference to your health, your life, your weight, so on? Potentially not, but it's a start. So actually, in a sort of long-winded way, it is going to make a huge difference. But yeah, remove the barriers. So, if it is a gym visit, get your gym clothes ready. Stick them out on the chair at the side, so that they are available for you. As soon as you get up, your clothes are there waiting. You can get them on, you can go. Or even, if that's still a struggle, consider doing something at home. Anything is better than nothing. And finally, it's better to start low and slowly bring it up. So, like I said before, one gym visit is better than nothing. If you're averaging 3,000 steps, target 5,000, not 10,000. You can build up to that. If you're trying to gain an extra 7,000, that's over double the amount of steps you're already doing. You're going to feel it. It's going to be difficult. And that's going to be a knock. That's going to be a hard one to achieve. Build it up in increments and you will get there, but be realistic. What does this have to do with motivation, though? I can sort of understand people sort of looking and thinking, if you're not realistic, it doesn't matter how much you want it to happen, it's not going to. You're not going to maintain those actions long term or keep motivated if it isn't realistic. So just to summarize that page as well, understand your priorities, step 1, but then make sure the goals you set around them are realistic, they're achievable, they're manageable, and start small and then, slowly pick it up as you go. And tip number 3, be accountable. So when you're accountable only to yourself, you need to have discipline in place to carry on. But as I mentioned before, you've got to get to that. There's a chain to get to that. When you have someone holding you to account, you're more likely to succeed. So I know if I tell someone I'm going to do something, or I make arrangements to be somewhere, or I tell someone I'm going to call them at a certain time, I do it. That happens. I will do whatever I can to do that, and I feel terrible if I don't. And that is the psychology of humans. We want to please, we want to turn, we want to have done it. And then examples of accountability could be, my dog there, get more steps, a friend to help you go to the gym, or a coach to check in with. That photo there of my dog Max, he is the perfect accountability for me to make me walk more. If I don't walk him, he chews up the house and he is restless and he's irritating. So that drives me to go out. I find the time in my day and I go out and I give him the steps. Because of him, I don't have issues with steps. My step count is 10,000 plus a day. Whether that be a really busy day, I still find a gap in there somewhere where I get out and I walk him, because otherwise he does all of those things that I mentioned before. Now, that's not an area I need accountability, but I have hired coaches. When I started my coaching business over 4 years ago, I hired a coach. He pushed me, he gave me ideas. He pointed out all the things I was afraid of doing, that I was, all these barriers I was pointing at for myself. He pointed them out to me. He kept me on track, but more importantly, he believed in me. He was there when things were going well. We celebrated the success, but he was there when things weren't going so well, and he gave me that push in the right direction. He gave me that motivation. Now, having hired the coach, I also had what I describe as skin in the game. So I paid a decent sum of money to him for some help. I needed to see results. I needed to make that back for me, for my family, just to prove to myself that I could do it, to prove to everyone around me, everyone that I'd said, this is what I'm going to do. I needed to show them I could do it, and that really drove me on. Okay, so I've rambled quite a lot there. So any questions so far? Hi, Phil. So Phil, one of my clients there. Phil, any questions so far? Just drop them in the comments if you've got that. And I'll just go over to Zoom. I'll check Zoom. Okay, so Greg on Zoom is asking, can I have a copy of the questionnaire? Yes, Greg. If you send me a message afterwards, I'll send you the link. And if anyone else does want it, just drop me a message afterwards with the word priorities, and I'll send it over to you. But yeah, send me that over afterwards, otherwise I will forget. Let me check. Any more? No, nothing on Facebook. Fantastic. Okay, let's carry on with Dan's story. So, how did Dan improve his health and get in shape? He had a heart attack. So, Dan is okay, but unfortunately Dan had left things too late. He kept putting things off and it caught up with him. The heart attack was the kick up the backside he needed, and it got him going. That was his motivation. But let's be honest, prevention is much better than a cure here. Dan ended up on the operating table. He nearly died. He had heart stents. It's not a great place to be. Whereas actually, if 9 months prior to that, he had took this serious, whether that be with me or just with, just by himself. But if he'd have took some action, he could have avoided getting to where he was, getting onto that table. But he kept putting it off. Other things were a priority. And that's the thing for me. It's really important that if this is important, if this is something you need to sort of stop putting it off. You don't need all the time in the world. You just need to get started. Couple of examples of guys that I've worked with who've taken that leap, and again, they sort of stick out to me when I'm discussing motivation. So we've got Stuart on the left there, a financial advisor of his own practice. So as he says, there's been a drastic change. Hasn't felt like a change. I'm totally different than I was at the start, but it feels like daily life. I've lost weight and I don't feel like I'm sacrificing anything. Now, Stuart had tried all sorts of diets. He'd been trying to get his weight down for a good 10 years. He'd done Atkins, he'd done cabbage soup diets, if you name it, he probably had a go at it. Now, he had a level of motivation, he had that drive. He knew that he needed to change, and he had an understanding of why that was. But his plan was not realistic. He was trying all these boom and bust approaches. Nothing was lasting. That was the key for him. We needed to steady that ship and come up with something manageable, something he could do, and ultimately would get him that expected outcome. But that's the thing for him. His was realism. Now, if we go over to Darren on the right there, as Darren says, get off the fence, a chat costs nothing, and for me it was worthwhile. There's no way I would have gotten out of the funk I was in if I hadn't met Chris and done the programme. Now, Darren was the opposite to Stuart. He didn't have the motivation. He tried hardly anything. He felt stuck in a rut, and it didn't matter which way he looked, he could always see problems. There was always a reason why things wouldn't work. So with Darren, we had to understand what were his priorities, what were his reasons to improve his health, And then once we had those, we then had to start with a really easy to achieve plan. The example being, go to the gym once, get those steps up by 2,000 steps. We started really low. It's not groundbreaking stuff. It didn't make a huge difference straight away, but actually we started to compound that and build it up. And then Darren then started to see things from a different light. It wasn't a case of I can't go to the gym, because he'd done it once a week, and then he'd done it twice a week, and then he'd added in his mountain biking another weekend. So actually the time was there, but he was just getting in his own way. So two very different guys. Now, if you want me to help you achieve lasting results, if you want to be next, if you want to look better, lose weight, be slimmer, fitter, just fit in your clothes and look the business, have more energy, improve your health markers so you look and feel amazing at the same time, and come away with a sustainable and enjoyable plan in place that works. But you can enjoy life. You can still go out and do things, and you have that resilience. So no matter what life throws at you, you're able to deal with it. You can push forward. Now, if that sounds like something you're interested in, click the link, which I'm going to drop in the Facebook comments. And if you're over on Zoom, I'll drop it into the chat area in a second. And if you are watching this on some sort of replay on YouTube or something like that, just look out for that link in the description. But if you click that call booking link, it's a 15-minute phone call. And on that call, we're going to understand your current situation, your routines, your commitments. We'll look at where the bottlenecks are. We'll look at where the opportunities are, what we can improve. If I feel you're a fit, then I'll show you how my program could work specifically for you, and we'll discuss what your custom plan would look like. And if you feel like it's a fit, I'll break down how my coaching works, so that we can get you there, but not only get you there faster, but also help you stay there for good. Any more questions? Let me go over to Facebook. So Phil's saying, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the accountability. And then he also says, working as I do in healthcare, hang on, Seymour, I've always been good at giving out advice, found it difficult myself to take control of my own health. I knew what I needed to do, but tried different ways for the quick fix. Looking at the process and trusting the process over a more long-term sustainable method has helped me to do what I've been trying to do. Exactly that. I think, and I don't want to dive too much into your specifics, Phil. I'm sure you won't mind if I do, but for me, it is just about having that realistic plan and just making sure we're managing it. With yourself, obviously, there's been some injuries along the way, some issues along the way, but you've kept with the process and you've looked at it realistically. You've decided what you can still do, and that's, for me, has been really important. All right. Any other questions on Facebook? Let me just go over and check Zoom. I've lost you, Zoom. There you are, found you. Yep, so Greg, I will send that link straight after the call. Just a reminder to anybody else, if you do want that questionnaire, just message me after this with the word priorities. Okay, so Mark on Zoom says he feels like his weight is so far away, and whenever he plans to start, this puts him off. How can he stay motivated? Okay, so in your case, Mark, I think the key here is to be realistic. Obviously, without knowing your situation, I can't comment exactly. But as I said in the training, I'd start to look at what that is. I'd understand what the long-term goal is, and then I'd start to break that down into smaller chunks. Because, if you look up Everest from the bottom, it looks huge. Whereas actually, if you look at Base Camp 1, Base Camp 2, it starts to break it down. And it's a bit more manageable. So that's what I would do if I were you. I would look at the outcome, break that down, and then look at the process and just think, right, if long term I want to be hitting the gym 3 times a week, or I want to be hitting 10,000 steps, look at where you are now and then just start to notch it in the right direction. Start low, build things up. But yeah, just make sure it's manageable overall. But yeah, if you want to go into your specifics, obviously it's a bit hard to do that on the call here, but book in that call, click the link. I still haven't dropped in. I'll drop it in a sec. But yeah, if you book yourself in, we can go for your specifics. All right, let me drop the link into Facebook. I've lost the link. I'll drop the link into Facebook in a second after the call, and same with the Zoom link. I'll drop that in a second. Any more questions on Facebook? Any more questions over on Zoom? Okay, Phil. So Mark, this one's for you. So Phil on Facebook says, I find doing manageable things and making subtle changes as per Chris have made me rethink what I do. Yeah, so again, you've just got to look at exactly where you are, and ultimately just see how you can notch it forward in the right direction. You know, everyone is different, so I can't really say specifically what would work for you. Obviously, what's worked for Phil is that, but he has his own sort of breakdown as such. Any other questions, guys? Anything else at all? I'm going to drop those links. So one's going into Facebook now, and then one's going into Zoom as well. So guys, if you do want to book in that call, click that link that I've just dropped in there. Pick a 15-minute slot. There's no obligation to move forward, but like I say, we'll have a chat, see exactly where you are, and then see what we can do to sort of move you forward. Right, if there's nothing else, we'll wrap up then. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you got some value. Stick anything in the comments, any questions, any sort of feedback from the training. I will be running some more of these in the future, so if there's anything, any particular topics you want covering as well, drop that into the comments as well. And yeah, if they're popular, I'll chuck that together. Guys, have a good one.